All right, so today we're going to be deep diving into the world of chain-making machine operator.
Oh, exciting.
And I am really excited to be talking about this one because I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
I think so too. It's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be looking at the career guides and also the interview guides.
Oh, that's good.
So let's get started with one of the first questions that you might be asked during an interview, which is, what experience do you have in operating chain-making machines?
Okay.
So this seems kind of straightforward, but there's got to be a way to really make this stand out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people could just list off machines or, something very basic like that.
Right.
But you want to think about really what you can say to make yourself stand out.
Hmm.
So think about,
Hmm.
do you have any experience with a specific challenging chain design or a specific technique that you can talk about? Like
Right.
soldering or finishing,
Yeah.
something that really highlights your skills. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like if you were working on a really intricate chain
Yeah.
and, you had to problem solve that to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you had a project that involved a really challenging chain design, or maybe you mastered a certain technique that wasn't easy to learn,
Mm-hmm.
talk about that,
Yeah.
and use those specific examples and kind of paint that picture for the interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
Not just telling them about it, but really making them see it and understand what you did.
I like that. So it's all about showing, not just telling,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. Yes.
Exactly. So now what about those who are newer to this field, who maybe don't have a lot of experience on the machines?
Yeah.
Like, what's your advice to them for this question?
So in those cases, transferable skills are really going to be key. You want to think about your previous experience and how it can apply to operating these machines.
Okay.
So maybe you've worked with other machinery before,
Mm-hmm.
even if it wasn't specifically chain making equipment.
Yeah.
Think about, did you operate a drill press in a previous role? Maybe you've assembled intricate components before. So really think about
Yeah.
how can you highlight your mechanical aptitude and your eagerness to learn the specifics of chain making.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because like you're saying, it's not necessarily about having been a chain-making machine operator for the last 10 years or something, but it's really about showing that you have the skills that are going to help you to be successful in this role.
Exactly.
So now let's say the interviewer digs a bit deeper and asks you, can you describe a time when you had to troubleshoot a problem with the machine?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things you'd recommend people keep in mind when answering a question like this?
So this is where you can really showcase your problem-solving skills.
Okay.
And you can use the STAR method here.
Mm-hmm.
So that stands for situation, task, action, result.
Right.
So you want to start by briefly describing the situation. You outline the problem you encountered, explain the task you were responsible for, and then you're going to detail the specific actions you took to diagnose and solve that problem. Really emphasize your technical knowledge and your initiative here.
Okay.
And then finally, you're going to want to highlight the positive result of your actions.
So it's really about painting a clear picture of how you approach problem solving.
I like that.
Oh.
And also, I wanted to mention here that RoleCatcher actually has an AI interview prep tool that can really help with this kind of question.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds really useful.
So you can actually use it to practice answering these questions. And it'll analyze things like your response, your tone, even your body language.
Oh,
And it'll give you tailored feedback to help you really nail that interview.
that's incredible. So it's like having a personal coach right there in your pocket.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend checking that out. And now let's move on to another question that you might encounter in an interview, which is, what is your understanding of the production process for chains?
So this one's getting a little more into that technical knowledge. So what are some things you think people should focus on when they're answering this question?
So you really want to showcase your knowledge of the craft here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start by outlining the basic steps involved in making a chain.
Okay.
So that could be, from feeding the wire into the machine to forming and connecting the links and then soldering and finishing it off.
Right.
But then go a step further and mention different chain types,
Okay.
like maybe cable chains or rope chains and the specific techniques that are involved in creating those.
So basically impress them with all your knowledge.
Exactly.
So what happens if you're in an interview and you blank on some of the details?
Yeah, that can happen. Don't panic.
Right.
Honesty is always the best policy here.
Okay.
Instead of trying to bluff your way through, simply acknowledge that you might not be familiar with that specific detail, but express your eagerness to learn. You say something like, I'm always looking to expand my knowledge and I'm eager to learn more about that aspect of chain making.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great way to turn it into a positive.
Yeah.
Because it shows you're willing to learn and you're not, afraid to admit when you don't know something.
Exactly.
All right, so now let's move on to a question that really tests your ability to ensure quality.
Hmm.
How do you ensure the quality of the chains being produced?
Okay.
So this one's all about that attention to detail, right?
Yes, absolutely. You want to talk about the importance of regular inspections at each stage of the production process
Right.
and mention specific tools that you'd use, like maybe calipers to measure the link dimensions or a micrometer to check the wire gauge.
Okay, now hold on for a second. For those of us who maybe aren't as familiar with these tools,
Yeah.
can you just give us a quick explanation of what calipers and micrometers are?
Oh, sure. Yeah, calipers are like a specialized ruler that are used to measure really small distances very accurately. And then a micrometer is even more precise than that, and it's used to measure things like the thickness of the wire that you use to make the chain.
Okay, so basically you're using these tools to make sure that everything is exactly the right size and shape,
Exactly.
and that everything's meeting those really specific standards.
Yes, and you can even mention specific quality control documentation that you've worked with in the past if you have that experience.
Okay.
Something like ISO standards or industry-specific guidelines.
So that really shows that you're not just, making chains, but you're really dedicated to making high-quality chains that meet those industry standards.
Right.
All right, so now here's a question that often throws people off.
Hmm.
Can you describe a time when you had to troubleshoot a particularly challenging issue with the chain-making machine?
Ooh, okay.
So this one really requires a bit of storytelling.
It does, yeah. And you want to choose an example that showcases your problem-solving abilities, your technical knowledge, and maybe even your ability to think outside the box.
No?
Remember that STAR method? Describe the situation, the task, the action you took, and the positive result.
So don't be afraid to get specific here.
Right.
Like, mention the symptoms that you observed,
Yeah.
the tools that you used to diagnose the issue,
Yeah.
and the steps that you took to resolve it.
Exactly.
Did you have to consult a manual? Did you collaborate with a colleague?
Mm-hmm.
All of those details can really help to engage the interviewer.
Yeah, and if you can quantify the results of your actions, that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
Did your solution reduce downtime by a certain percentage? Or improve the quality of the chains that were being produced?
Great.
Numbers really speak volumes here.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty tough technical questions. Now let's shift gears to a question that focuses more on your versatility.
Okay.
So the question is, can you explain your experience with different types of chains?
All right.
So this is where you really get to demonstrate your range.
Yes. So if you've worked with a variety of chain styles, you want to mention that.
Okay.
Maybe you've worked with simple cable chains or more intricate rope chains, maybe even specialty chains like Figaro or curb chains.
Mm-hmm.
You want to highlight your familiarity with different link shapes, materials, and gauges.
Okay, so it's really about painting a picture of all the experience that you have.
Yeah, and if they happen to ask about a specific type of chain that you haven't worked with before, just be honest. Acknowledge that you might not have direct experience with that particular chain type, but express your willingness to learn. You can even mention any transferable skills that you have from working with similar chain styles.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so before we move on to the next set of questions, I want to touch on something that we mentioned earlier, which is RoleCatcher's AI-powered tools.
Yes.
So how can those tools help us to tailor our answers for these specific job roles?
So one of the coolest things about RoleCatcher is that its AI can actually analyze job descriptions and identify those specific skills and keywords that employers are looking for.
Wow.
So when you're practicing your interview answers, you can use this feature to make sure that you're hitting those key points and that you're using the language that's going to resonate with the hiring manager.
So basically, it's like having a secret weapon to really decode that job description.
Exactly.
And craft answers that are going to make you stand out.
Yes.
That's amazing. Okay, well, let's dive back into those interview questions. I'm ready for round 2.
Let's do it. So moving right along, let's talk about prioritizing tasks when you're operating the chain-making machine.
Okay.
So the question might be something like, how do you prioritize tasks when operating the chain-making machine?
Mm-hmm.
And it might seem kind of simple on the surface.
Right.
But it's a really good opportunity to show that you can manage your time effectively and keep production running smoothly.
Yeah, because in a fast-paced environment like that, you really have to know how to juggle a lot of different things at once.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that you would recommend highlighting in an answer to this question?
Well, think about the specific demands of the role,
Well,
Are there deadlines that need to be met?
mm-hmm.
Do certain chain types take priority over others? Right.
You could say something like, I always start by reviewing the production orders and identifying any rush jobs.
Oh,
And then I plan my workflow to make sure those are completed on time while also trying to minimize downtime between tasks.
so it's all about being organized and thinking ahead.
Exactly.
Now, what about those unexpected situations that always seem to come up?
Uh-huh.
Like, let's say a machine malfunctions or a rush order comes in.
Right.
How would you handle something like that?
Well, interviewers really want to see that you can adapt to those changing circumstances.
Okay.
So you could say something like, if a machine breaks down, my first priority is to address the issue safely and efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
maybe by contacting maintenance or attempting a basic repair myself if I'm qualified to do so.
Right.
And then I would adjust my workflow to try to minimize any delays in production,
Okay.
maybe by focusing on tasks that don't require the machine that's malfunctioning.
Yeah. So you're basically showing them that you're proactive and you're thinking about solutions.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to another question, which is, can you describe a time when you improved the efficiency of the chain-making machine?
Ooh, I like this one.
Yeah, this is where you can really show off those problem-solving skills and your initiative.
Absolutely. So for this one, you'll want to choose an example where you identified a bottleneck in the process,
Okay.
came up with a solution and then actually implemented it.
Right.
So maybe you adjusted a machine setting that increased output,
Mm-hmm.
or you streamlined a workflow that saved time.
Okay.
And if you can quantify your results, that's even better.
Right.
So you could say something like, by reorganizing the workspace, I reduced the time it took to switch between chain types by 15%, which led to increased productivity.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those numbers really make a statement.
They do.
And speaking of making a statement, don't forget about RoleCatcher's AI.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It can be so helpful with questions like this.
How so?
Well, you can use it to analyze your answer and make sure that you're highlighting the most relevant skills and accomplishments.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and it can even suggest ways to make your language stronger and more impactful.
Wow, that's really cool.
All right, so let's move on to another question that's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay up to date on industry trends and advancements in chain-making technology?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because the industry is constantly changing.
It is.
So it's really important to be aware of what's new and what's coming down the pipeline.
For sure. So with this question, you want to show that you're not just content with the status quo.
Okay.
So you could mention industry publications that you read,
Mm-hmm.
trade shows that you attend,
Okay.
online forums that you participate in.
Right.
And if you're interested in things like automation, you can talk about how you're learning about robotics or programming.
So basically, you're showing them that you're eager to learn and that you're keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry.
Yes, exactly.
Now, before we move on to our last few questions, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about career advancement.
Mm-hmm.
You said that RoleCatcher's career guide outlines different stages in a chain-making machine operator's career path.
It does.
Can you give us a quick overview of what that looks like?
Sure. So it typically starts with an entry-level position where you're really just focused on mastering those basics.
Okay.
And as you gain experience, you can progress to roles with more responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe a junior operator, then senior operator, and eventually you could even become a lead operator.
So there's a clear path for growth within this field.
Yes, definitely.
And how does all of this knowledge that we're talking about today tie into those career advancements?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the skills that we've been discussing, like troubleshooting, quality control, and process improvement,
Mm-hmm.
those are all essential for moving up that ladder.
Oh.
So, for example, if you're aiming for a senior operator role,
Mm-hmm.
you'll need to be able to demonstrate expertise in all of those areas.
Right.
You'll not only be operating the machine, but you'll also be training others, overseeing production, and ensuring that those quality standards are met.
So basically, by mastering these interview questions, you're not just preparing for the interview.
Right.
You're actually building a foundation for a successful career in chain making.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's dive back into those interview questions with a focus on how your answers can really set you up for those future advancements.
All right, so we're back and ready to wrap up our interview prep for aspiring chain-making machine operators.
Sounds good.
We've talked about showcasing your technical skills, your problem-solving abilities, and even your commitment to continuous learning.
It's a lot to cover.
It is. But you know what they say? Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into one more question that can really set you apart from other candidates.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so the question is, can you describe a time when you improved the efficiency of the chain-making machine?
Ooh, this is a good one. It's all about showing initiative. Exactly. You want to demonstrate that you're not just content with doing things the way they've always been done.
Right.
You're actively looking for ways to make the process better,
Yeah.
to streamline things, and to boost productivity.
I like it. So how do we do that?
Well, think about times when you've identified bottlenecks in the process.
Okay.
Maybe a step that was taking longer than it should or causing frequent errors.
Right, like a snag in the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then think about what you did to address that.
Okay, so for example...
Did you find a way to reorganize the workspace to reduce wasted movement?
Ooh, that's good.
Or maybe you suggested a change to the machine settings that increased output without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, I like that.
And the key here is to use quantifiable results whenever possible.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Did your solution increase production by a certain percentage?
Mm-hmm.
Did it reduce the scrap rate or minimize downtime?
Right, because numbers are powerful.
They are. They really make your accomplishments stand out.
And that's where RoleCatcher's AI can be super helpful.
Absolutely. It's like having a personal coach in your pocket.
I know, I love that feature.
So you can practice your answer using the AI interview prep tool.
Okay.
And it's going to analyze everything, your wording, your tone of voice, even your body language.
Wow.
And it'll give you feedback to help you present your accomplishments in the most compelling way.
That's really cool.
Okay, so now let's talk about one of the last questions you'll likely be asked in an interview.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
Oh, this one. It always seems like a throwaway question, but
it's not.
It's not. It's actually a really great opportunity to show that you've done your research,
Yes.
that you're genuinely interested in the company and the role,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're thinking about the bigger picture.
So what are some good questions to ask?
Well, you want to avoid asking questions that could be easily answered with a quick Google search.
Good.
Instead, ask questions that show you understand the company's goals or challenges.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure, you could ask, what are the company's plans for incorporating automation into the chain-making process?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could ask, what are some of the biggest challenges the company is facing in terms of meeting production demands?
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
And it shows that you're not just thinking about yourself and the job.
Right. You're thinking about how you can contribute to the company's success.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up, let's circle back to RoleCatcher's AI-powered CV and cover letter feedback.
Yes, please do. Because that is a game changer.
It is. One of the coolest things about RoleCatcher is that it can analyze job descriptions and identify those key skills and keywords that employers are looking for.
Right.
So you can upload your CV and cover letter, and the AI will compare them to the job description and highlight any areas where you might be missing crucial information.
Okay.
Or where you can strengthen your language to better align with the job requirements.
So it's like having a personal recruiter reviewing your application material.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And giving you personalized feedback to make them stand out.
That's amazing. And it's free.
It is. It's completely free to use.
I love that.
So there's no reason not to give it a try.
Not at all.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
I agree. We really have.
We've talked about everything from technical skills to problem solving to staying up to date on industry trends.
It's been a great deep dive.
It has.
Thank you.
And I hope that all of our aspiring chain-making machine operators out there feel more confident and prepared for their interviews.
Me too.
And remember, even if you don't land the first job you interview, for the skills and knowledge you gain through this process will be invaluable throughout your career journey.
That's so true.
So keep learning, keep growing, and keep chasing those dreams.
Yes.
And don't forget to check out RoleCatcher for all of your career prep needs.
It's an incredible resource.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. And until next time, happy chain making.